good, say yeah. We are Mello and the Rados, live hip hop band. We about to play some music for y'all, okay?
My name is Darnley Mello D. Hodge. I'm the frontman and founder of Mello D and the Rados live hip hop band. You can check us out at livehiphopband.com. Mello D and the Rados was started by myself in 1996 in Richmond, Virginia when I was a student down there. And my entire life, I have always kept my musical influences separate from each other. Basically, I started playing saxophone when I was 9 years old. I also started emceeing when I was 9 years old. I did my first rhyme called School when I was in the 4th grade. And I also picked up the saxophone that same year. And my entire life up through high school, I'd always kept them separate. I'd always done, you know, my jazz was over here, my hip hop was over here, and I never really learned to infuse the two or fuse the two. I never learned to fuse the two until basically around 95, 96 when I left high school and went to college. I was around a lot of other musicians, cats in the jazz program. There are other groups coming out like The Roots, and you know, of course, I was already a Tribe Called Quest fan, and a lot of other hip hop artists that I grew up listening to and that I love that incorporated hip hop in their music. So not hip hop into their music, but incorporated live instruments or that at least a live jazz sound into their music. So when I was a jazz minor at VCU, you know, I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I put together my own band called originally the Desperados. I eventually shortened the name to the Rados. Then I called it Mello D and the Rados, mainly because I was inspired by kind of Prince and the Revolution in that regard, because musicians are kind of fickle and I couldn't find steady cats. So I said, well, if I'm gonna have a band and I'm gonna have different musicians on every gig, then let me make it Mello D and the Rados. So that way, as long as I show up, and if my band members are fickle and I got to use a different keyboard player on a different gig or a different drummer, as long as I show up, you know, the crowd will still say, okay, this is who I came to see.
Yo, I'm the last one to laugh at, first one to blast back. Philosophy is math at the money hungry rat cat. Musically abstract, royalties from ASCAP, cover all expenses for the studio tracks. Want an opportunity, but the windows only half cracked. Back, sad rap, your rhymes smell like ass cracks. Use a son to me, like me, Shaq and Shadrack. Up in the go, with the flow, bitch, what you wishing for?
Mello D and the Rados has been a project of mine. Is something that has been an idea that I've constantly been developing over the last 11, 12 years. For about the last 7 years, I've had the same bass player. His name is Jesse Grimes. He's a real cool brother, real positive, straight edge cat, probably the only straight edge cat I've played with. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't hardly even curse too much, you know, real cool brother, and he's really good at playing bass and playing guitar. And you know, he's definitely a very valuable addition to the group.
You trying to crack on me?
You trying to crack on me?
Is he wrong with it again? I tell you, you just said like the same thing like 5 different ways.
My drummer joined the band after him. My man Olubenga, he's been with me for about 5 years, and he's a wild out cat, comedian, always cracking jokes, always got a sense of humor. And he's been with me on tour in England and tour in Brazil. He's toured with me up and down the East Coast. He was on the road with me when I was out with KRS-One. And he brings a lot of energy and a lot of creativity and a lot of originality to the group. My keyboard player is the newest member of the group. His name is Soul Zaran. He basically joined us about a year and a half, 2 years ago, because my old keyboard player decided to go off and you know, pursue some of his own personal goals, and didn't have the time to play with the group anymore. So I recruited Soul. He was actually a student at Duke Ellington School of Performing Arts. Incredible, multifaceted young brother. I actually went to his parents and had to talk to them to allow him to play with the group, because you know, we're all older cats, been doing it for years. He was still in high school at the time. And after they, you know, heard what we were about and understood that we were one of the more positive groups out here, and that we were one of the groups that's out here doing something that they can be proud that their son is doing, they could come to our shows and everything, they were down with it, and they've been big supporters of the group ever since. They actually have been to several of our shows and have always had a great time. Melody and the Rados exists is to prove to all these, is to prove once and for all that hip hop has musical viability and that people aren't out here being hip hop artists just because they don't have the ability to make quote unquote real music. 3 out of the 4 members of my band either have degrees in jazz or are like in my keyboard player's case is pursuing a degree in music. My drummer, he studied jazz in college. I have my minor degree is in jazz, and that's not to, I guess, say legitimize us as musicians, but more so just to say that, hey, just because we have the formal background and just because we have the ability to do that doesn't mean that we need to go that route just to show that we're quote unquote real musicians.